So thank you all who contributed to that little slideshow. And when you want to tell your story, I can pull up the pictures that you have. David Stern, would you like to say anything to all these folks here about your dad? And I don't know if your sister has joined us or not, but if she's here, I'd be happy to have her join you in any remarks you'd like to make.
Well, my sister's not here at the moment. My father was 92 and living independently in a two-story house all the way to the end. So he did pretty well. The house was very neat and clean, but my father didn't like to throw things away. And my sister and I were startled to find an entire dresser drawer full of probably every button from every dance he was at for the past 30 years. So we spread them out on the floor and took a couple of pictures. We thank all of you for the nice things about my father that you wrote on the Facebook page, and for the donation of trees in his memory. So I think that's I think I'll let all the rest of you talk.
Oh, thank you very much, David. Thank you. That's very heartwarming to hear. I wonder what happened to all the buttons. Did they end up in the dumpster, or are they?
No, we just took those pictures yesterday, so they're still spread out on the floor. They will be going in the dumpster soon, unless anybody wants them.
Okay, folks. So you can use the chat and send a little note to David Stern if you're interested in a memento from Frank's amazing collection of dance buttons. Right.
Also, there are probably close to 1,000 books in the house. A lot of them are obsolete math and physics and chemistry textbooks, probably of no interest to anyone. But there is a 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, which is a very highly regarded edition written by and for very intelligent people. The leather bindings are in bad shape, but the paper is in good shape. I hope somebody wants it. If not, I might be packing it up and shipping it to California, even though I don't really want it, but it seems too good to throw away.
Wow. Someday I'll tell you a story about how I bought an encyclopedia and it's still sitting gathering dust in the living room. Well, I'm going to share a screen of Alice's photo. And Alice, would you like to tell us anything about this photo or your friendship with Frank? Anything you'd like to contribute?
Sure, I'll be glad to. Well, that was taken in 2019 at Across the Lake, which is in Burlington. And we shared a room. We were in a suite. And Frank very often would share rooms with women. And he would always do the first dance with him and the last dance with him and the waltz with him. Mm-hmm. And we always had a really good time. The other time I went away with him was in 2019. We went to Santa Cruz together. I went to Berkeley, spent a few days with my family. I met up with him. And then we spent a couple of days around Santa Cruz, about two or three days. And we went to the dance there as well. So he was always very good company and always very pleasant, very intelligent to talk with. And we had a lovely time together. Unfortunately, he took pictures of me, but every time I wanted to take a picture of him, he's, no, you don't need a picture of me. You know, no pictures of me around. So I didn't get to get any pictures of him. But we had a very, very nice time together as usual.
Yeah, thank you, Alice. So Sandy, this one is a little distorted. Would you like to talk a little bit, Sandy?
Yes, I sure would. Yeah. You'll see what the pictures are. I'm going to share for about 5 minutes or so. I have a lot of memories.
Okay.
I first met Frank in 1996 when I started English country dancing at the Church of the Highlands in White Plains, New York. And later in my so-called dance career, we shared countless wonderful experiences hither and yon. We often stayed at his favorite small hillside bed and breakfast the weekend of the Whately Ball on Richard Flora's lovely property. And now I often look at the group photo from 2019 and hope that magic will happen again in the future. A couple times, a bunch of us stayed at a fancy inn near the annual free-for-all. Frank often insisted on picking up the tab at a local restaurant since whining, dining, and good conversation brought him great pleasure. In October of 2014, Frank sponsored a fantastic sightseeing trip to Southern California before we attended the Bay Area Fall Frolic event. I really enjoyed his son David's hospitality in Mountain View before flying home the next day. I think the last time we danced together before the pandemic was in Port Ewan. Ken and Lindsay Morgan organized an evening event with Gary Rudman's Calling. I will forever picture Frank in his Scottish kilt attire, and I constantly joked that it took him 3 times longer to get ready for a ball than his female dance friends. The Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, including the beautiful grounds and the views, beckoned Frank Stern. Thankfully, he occasionally took me there to sample different types of cuisine. And the last time was in early June, 2 weeks before my older sister's memorial service in northern New Hampshire, where I was born and raised. In late August, Frank invited me for lunch at his favorite little restaurant in Pleasantville to celebrate my 70th birthday a bit early. He also gave me cuttings from his flower garden and several vintage books, including The History of Folk Dance, Ivanhoe, and JFK quotes. I will especially treasure a very old silver necklace worn by his wife, Shane. Another thoughtful birthday gift was a bottle of vintage wine. I cannot imagine drinking it yet, but look forward to sharing it with some CDW friends in the future. We will all miss you, Frank Stern. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Thank you. Yeah. I think I have some photos to share from Sharon. Let's see if oops, hold on just a minute here. Let me pull that up. Hold on just 1 second. There we go. Sharon Schenkel, you submitted some of the photos here. Would you like to tell us about?
There's Frank with Alice on the right. And when I sent them to you, Paul, I told you which years they were. And I only went through sort of more recent years because I wanted to get these out to you last night because they had to be in yesterday. And so I didn't have time to look for more.
That's
but,
okay.
As registrar for Across the Lake for, I don't know how many years I've been doing this, 17 or something. Frank always, usually he would come with Helen. And there were a couple of years that Helen wasn't available to come. And I think due to an injury, but I can't remember. And I helped him work out arrangements with other female companions that he was coming with, and a lot of back and forth. And when he would send in his registration form, he would always make a note to say hi or send his regards to my husband, which I always thought was very sweet. As registrar, sometimes I get notes from people, just, looking forward to it or whatever. But he always remembered to told me to give his regards to John, which I really liked. So anyway, lots of good times. And, if I can find any older pictures from years before, I'll send them to you, Paul.
Okay, Sharon, thank you. We'll add them to the Facebook page or the website.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think that was the last one you sent me. So actually, this picture is one that I took at the Country Dancers of Westchester Ball. And I will say a few words about those later, but I think Hara, you submitted this and one other, right?
Yes, I did. This was taken at the Westchester Scottish Ball in 2002. Can you hear me?
We do.
Okay. I actually met Frank first as a Scottish dancer. When I returned from college in the late 70s, I had newly discovered what was then called country dancing and also Scottish country dancing. So I joined for a little while, danced with the Westchester Scottish country dancers. So this was one of their balls. This was in 2002. I can't say I remember it specifically, but obviously we were there together. And like Alice and Sandy, I occasionally got invited to go to dances with him far and nearby. And he was very much the gentleman about always asking various women to accompany him. I think I once asked him about, why don't you just go yourself? That one is from True Britain 2003. And he said, he preferred to go with a female companion. So I left it at that. So this one I remember because this was the year I was going through chemo and I had lost my hair, so I was wearing a wig.
Wow.
But I went anyway. You know, it was, and that's Sue Scherer with Frank and I at the True Brit.
Hmm.
And he was very much a gentleman, and I knew him a very long time. Loved dancing with him as well. And you know what Sandy and Alice said was very true. Same for me.
Yeah. I think, Louise, are you there? I believe you submitted this photo. Louise
I
Adler?
did, and it was from this July when I spent about a week with Frank at his house, and then we also went up to the wonderful B&B in Massachusetts and out to lunch with Flora and yeah, her husband, and had a lovely time. And I'm mad at him for checking out. But we really, and I also went to various dance weekends and spent time at Pinewoods, sharing a cabin with him. And he really did prefer to share with a woman than a man. And in fact, he was always a gentleman. So
Lovely. Thank you. So Carl and Jackie, I believe you submitted this photo, or at least Carl did.
Carl
Do you guys want to say anything about this or about your friendship with Frank?
I would like to say a few words.
Sure, please.
Frank, in addition to all the things have already said about Frank's gentlemanly way of interacting with women and with everyone for that matter, struck me as someone who was incredibly generous and kind. When we moved into our house, he insisted on gifting us a beautiful red maple tree. It was a little tree. He told me I should pick the tree that I wanted, but under no conditions was I to plant it. It had to be planted by the professionals, which was very wise. And the tree actually succumbed about 3 or 4 months before Frank did, which was really poignant to me. It was an absolutely gorgeous tree. It grew perfectly. And this year we had a problem with another tree as well. And I called in the town forester to look at it, and he commented that this particular tree that Frank gave us was an incredible specimen and just had a glorious composition. So when it died, it was very sad for Carl and me, and I wasn't sure what to do about it in terms of telling Frank. I was afraid he might feel that he should replace it. I did not want him to do that. Because of his generosity, he'd be inclined to do most anything. So, but he said, that's part of life. Trees do die. And then his turn came. And so it felt especially touching to me that from our earliest, my earliest encounters with Frank, that tree was there every day reminding us of him. In addition, when we held dances at the house, which of course we are not doing right now, he always would come with pate and crackers. And I'm not sure how many people like pate and crackers, but Frank did, and a few other people did, and it was always gone by the end of the dance. So he never stayed for dinner, but would stay until it was near dark, and then he'd head home. And as he stopped driving at night, he and I started traveling to like the Philadelphia Ball together. And what struck me was that being in the car with someone for almost 3 hours, it could be quiet at times, but not with Frank. Frank had an incredible ability to converse with people. And mostly it was about people. He cared so much about others and about knowing all the people at dances. He would always look at the dance list to make sure he knew everyone. And if there was someone he didn't know, he would go out of his way to introduce himself and get to know that person, which I found remarkable and really extremely friendly. So needless to say, I miss Frank a lot, and I am sorry his tree isn't here to remind us, but we've replanted another tree, and I still consider it that it is Frank's tree because it's in Frank's spot. Thank you, Frank. You were a great friend.
Thank you, Jackie. That was really lovely. Really, really sweet. I'm going to share the two photos that I took. Let's see if I can do that. No, that's the wrong one. Hold on just a moment. I thought I had those up. Let's see if I do. Here's one. Yep. So I think I'll say a few words, and then we'll throw this open to others who'd like to make their remarks. As I mentioned, this was taken at the Country Dancers of Westchester Ball. Frank most often came dressed in Scottish garb, and as I understand it, he was a Scottish dancer long before he was an English dancer. The first time he was at Pinewoods was in 1990, and I know that because he wrote me an email last year, in July of last year, and he said, "Paul, double thanks for your talk on the Historical Tea and Dance Society website, and second for hosting the CDW Zoom gathering this evening. I enjoyed both. Your talk on Tuesday brought a couple of things to mind. You mentioned the double bed fund at Ladd's. I stayed in Ladd's the first time I went to Pinewoods in 1990, but by then it was no longer men only. How did any hanky-panky escape May Gadd's bush patrol? I regret never having met her, and even more regret never having met Phil Merrill." So he obviously had a long history with English country dancing as well. He had an insatiable curiosity through various emails and conversations. I knew that he took yoga at Kripalu in Lenox, Mass. He took a Zoom session on Ottoman music from the great recorder player Daphne Moore. He took an online history of Western dance at Purchase College. So he had, I would say, an insatiable curiosity. That was one of his really admirable qualities. He was also a very generous friend. In July of 2017, he took me and Faina out to lunch at the cafe in our local park in Fort Tryon Park. And in his usual way, and this is familiar, I'm sure, to many of you, he picked up the check. Also, he had a restrained but very well-honed sense of humor. So we were having a correspondence about some of the dance items that he wanted to offload to others. And he wrote to me in June, "Hello, Paul. In addition to the materials which I'll give to Dan Popowitz at Pinewoods, I have a shoebox with 3x5 dance cards with dance instructions I prepared for English country dance balls and other events. They were for my own benefit and are not suitable for callers. Would anyone want them?" And I wrote back to him and said, "Hi, Frank, I'm glad you enjoyed the Midtown concerts. If only there were a museum tracking the ephemera of English country dancing like there is for cultural leftovers from the 60s. But in the absence of such a collection, I don't really know who might be interested in your dance notes. And he wrote back to me, Paul, thanks. I trashed my dance cards. Much easier than disposing of Jewish prayer books. So that's my brief recollection of a wonderful man. Yeah, he was fantastic. So I think I should read a couple of emails that I received from folks who can't be here tonight. And then I'm going to throw this open to others who'd like to speak up and share their memories, anecdotes, or just feelings about Frank. So this comes from Marjorie Nugent, and she said, I don't have much to contribute. Marjorie, are you here in this meeting? I don't think she is, yeah. I don't have much to contribute, except to say I knew Frank originally from international folk dancing in Chicago when I lived in Wisconsin in the 80s and 90s. And I was struck by his openness of spirit, his joy, and his focus on each person that he interacted with. I ran into him again when I first attended Spring Dance Weekend after moving to California. I was delighted to see him so unexpectedly, as neither of us knew the other's involvement in English country dance. I last saw Frank at the 2020 Elm City Assembly on my way to St. Croix English Week, and I asked him to be sure to save me a dance. He wasn't up to doing turn singles, but he still danced with joy. Now this comes from Lynn Hanover. She writes, let's see. Our Westchester Scottish group made a tree donation in his name, and we spent some time communicating our feelings of loss and sharing some memories. Frank was actually at our dance branch in Elmsford the day before. His presence will certainly be missed in all the many dance venues he attended. His was a life well lived. I also got an email from Al Smith, who dances both Scottish and English. He says, here are some thoughts about Frank. Always a gentleman, generous with his time. We'll remember his smile and the twinkle in his eye. He always offered to assist me when I seemed lost in a dance, particularly Scottish. Like I was once, a fixture at every dance, as well as a financial supporter. And then the last email I'll read comes from Robert Moyer. Robert and Hazel send their best wishes. And he wrote, we were saddened to read the news about Frank Stern's passing. He was indeed a great guy who we met variously here in Europe and in the United States, including our 2 visits when I called at Pinewoods. So those are some of the folks who would have been with us if they could have been. And now I'd like to start by offering the floor to one of our international visitors, Geet Bol from the Netherlands, is now in Michigan. And Geet, I think you're here, are you not?
I am, yes.
Oh yeah, there you are. Oh, grand. So I think you have a few things you'd like to tell us, and then folks who'd like to speak and raise their hands, and we'll try to catch all of you.
Yeah, like so many, I have also many fond memories and many anecdotes about Frank. I first met Frank when I started dancing at CDW, where he helped Steve Lansdowne in basically the back room of CDW to teach the beginners their first ECD dance moves. And as always, he was very patient and guided me in the right direction with his friendly smile, always a gentleman. At CDW, he often also would walk up to me for the last waltz, like so many of us also have experienced that, which was always a very wonderful experience. And he was a great dancer. But it was always, in a way, funny as well, as I was at least a head taller than him. Frank loved to go to ECD balls, as many of us also know, and I joined him also on several occasions. Frank was really a routine lover. He would always eat at the same restaurants, going to a certain place every year on the way, and stop at the same places and stay in the same hotel. And he planned his trips meticulously, and nothing would stop him to go to a ball. I remember spending hours and hours in a snowstorm on our way to Philadelphia, but we did get there on time. He was also my colleague in the physical sciences department at IBM. Research in Yorktown Heights. And at the time, he was already emeritus researcher. And every Friday, he would come into the office, report to Stella, his favorite secretary, and would gather with other emeriti for lunch and go to the physical sciences seminar later in the afternoon. There he would sit together with all the other emeriti in the front row on the left side of the hall and listen to what the younger generation had to say. He definitely loved his Friday routine, and he regularly also would drop by my office to say hello. When I moved to the Netherlands, life got busy and I lost contact with Frank. But 3 years ago, I got an email from my HR person, who is also a dancer, on Sunday evening that she just returned from a dance weekend in Belgium and met this very nice gentleman from the United States named Frank Stern. And when he heard that she was from Eindhoven, where I lived at the time, he asked if she knew me, and she did. So to his surprise, and I think also to his joy, and he asked her to send me his greetings. And so she did. It made me really smile when I received her email right when she got back home. I could tell that Frank must have been really persistent. And yeah, so as I said, I didn't see him for a while, but I have the fondest memories of him and dancing with him. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you very much, Kate. And it's so good to see you. I'd like to recognize Judy. You can unmute yourself, Judy Zinger, and yeah, tell us something if you'd like to, please.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of memories, but I've danced with Frank for a long time. And one thing that I remember particularly was fun. It was one year when I got to Pine Woods. I got there early, and Frank got there early. And he said, let's go on the Marblehead tour. Does anybody remember the Marble? It was his idea. He brought a whole big bag of marbles, and he'd hit all the heads at the bathroom in Pine Woods and supplied the marble machines that I guess James Sr. had made years and years ago. So that was it. We went all through the camp and hit every single one of them, and made sure that all those machines had all the marbles that they could use. It's a great idea. Yeah. And he was kind too. When I fell and broke my femur in 2016, he came by and I made it known that I could have some help. And he brought me to do some errand, and then we went in Terrytown to the that tea shop. I don't know if you remember that tea shop in Terrytown, the Silver Tips or something like that. It's not there anymore, I'm sorry to say. It was next door to Left Terrace, and they've taken it over. But it was just a lovely, we had high tea. And it was great. So
thank you, Judy.
That's my memory. Thank you.
Very nice. So Susan's iPad, is that, I think that's Susan St. Germain. I could be wrong. Susan, would you like to unmute yourself? And you have your hand raised. No?
Am I unmuted now?
You are.
Oh, good. Okay. This is my first time using Zoom. Can you see me? or not?
No.
Oh, I don't know what to do to do that. But anyway, I'll just say what I was going to say. Among Frank's many good qualities, I remember most vividly his ability to quietly assess situations where help was needed and then to take suitable action. For instance, when he saw the need for someone to take responsibility for setting up and taking down the sound amplification system at CDW events, he voluntarily learned how to do the work. And also he devised the sign-up chart to include other volunteers. And he made sure there was always someone in charge of sound at every single CDW event for many years. And that was so helpful. Anyway, that was one really nice thing I remember among many. So on to the next.
Well, thank you very much, Susan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think Sharon Schenkel has her hand up, and you can put your hand down after you're recognized. Yeah.
Okay. It was just one thing that came to me when Jackie mentioned the pate. Frank always, for across the lake for our brunch on Sunday morning, he would always bring a jar of herring. So did he bring jars of herring anywhere else? And same with the pate. I don't know how many people, were going to appreciate the herring, but it always went. So it just Jackie's comment about the pate made me think of that.
Thank you, Sharon.
You're welcome.
Was that creamed herring or?
I don't think so, but it was Vita herring, the small jars of Vita herring.
Oh,
and I
yeah.
guess sort of portable, that he could bring it, because lots of times when people contribute to the brunch, if they're traveling from afar, they're like, what do I bring? And we used to tell people, well, you can stop at a supermarket and pick something up. Or stop and buy bagels or donuts or whatever. So anyway, but he always brought a jar of herring. That was Frank.
Thank you. Ted and Tanya, it's so nice to see both of you. You can unmute and tell us your story.
So I saw Frank at Pinewoods this past year, and I made sure to sit out a dance with him every evening because he was not dancing, but he came to the evening dances and he sat on the side, and I made sure that I always came over and sat out a dance with him, and we would talk instead of dancing together since he wasn't going to be dancing. I also remember that whenever I would get my breakfast from him at Pinewoods, he would always try to give me like a little extra. If he had been told to give a certain amount to each camper, I would find that he'd put like a little extra on my plate, when it was going by, and he'd kind of wink at me a little bit on the way by. But I don't remember what year I met him, but I met him somewhere in the late 80s or 90s at either the New York or Philadelphia Ball or Westchester Ball, actually, any of those.
That's a long friendship.
Yeah.
I find that I'm jealous of all the women that he would travel with to dances, and we get to know them. But I also had a long friendship and fondness for Frank. He was always a joy to be around and to be on the dance floor with, and miss him terribly. That's all.
Oh, indeed. Thank you.
Paul, it's Helen. I don't know how to put the little yellow hand up, but I would like to speak at some point.
Okay, Helen, thank you. I'll be calling on you shortly. I'd like to offer the floor to Val and Tom from Vermont.
Hi. Well, I know Frank a lot from across the lake and a whole bunch of other events, and we've had some interesting conversations on Frank's participation in Across the Lake. But I just wanted to mention to Sharon that there are other events that Frank has brought the herring to, and I was the recipient of a leftover half-filled jar of herring to bring home because he didn't want it. Nor did the people at the event want it, so I got it.
Oh, and could I just say one thing about Frank, a little memory of Frank that I have? This was at a Freet for All, and it must have been in 2016. My mom had passed away in early March of that year, and it was still difficult, as all of you know, when you lose someone close to you. And Frank had asked me to dance, and I think it was Freet Paul can tell me if Freet was alive then. I think she was.
She actually died in 2010.
Oh, so it wasn't Freet who called it. Okay.
Yeah, but if it was Lennox,
we weren't doing the Freed for All that late. That must have been
probably the Lennox assembly.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Well, I hope I have my years right. Anyway, I remember I was very emotional at this particular event, and Frank was dancing with me, and the dance was Now for a Little Something, and I was tearing up, and Frank was tearing up along with me.
Oh.
So that meant a lot to me that he was sharing in that moment.
Very sweet story, Val. Thank you. Eric and Claire, and then Helen.
This is just a brief story. At these dance weekends, of course, there's frequently a need to have people sweep the floor. And at one dance weekend, year after year, Claire and I would sign up to sweep the floor. And
before lunch, because we
Yes.
knew we couldn't stay up late.
And Frank would be the third one of our party. So we'd always
Right.
coordinate to make sure that we found the appropriate time and got our names on the list.
Yes, and he'd come over and he'd say, "When are you doing it? Did you put my name on?" I said, "Yes, we put your name on, Frank." And Frank and I always talked, but we would talk about his travels and our travels. And it seems like other people talked about other things, but I remember he talked about one of his last trips. He took out to the Grand Canyon and just how much delight he took in our national parks. And he just took delight in everything. And I took delight in the events that I knew I would likely see Frank at, and I'd look for him. And on rare occasion recently, when he wouldn't be at one of those events, I'd be very disappointed. But we'd always look for one another and try to make sure we had a dance. And if at some of these big balls it happened that we didn't, at the end before he went home, he said, "Oh, we didn't have a dance, but the next time." So he just was really special.
Indeed. Well, that's a nice story. Thank you. Helen, you wanted to say something, so please unmute and tell us.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Paul, and thank you for putting this together. I don't take photographs, but there was a photograph of me dancing with Frank that Paul took. And I'm pleased to say that neither of us is plodding along like we're hiking. Like Freed used to hate, we're leaning forward. Chris Hodgkin used to say that an English country dancer shot would always fall forward. And that's a good rule to live by. Hundreds of miles I've driven with Frank as my partner, and we talk about all kinds of things. I'm amazed that he didn't start Pinewoods earlier because he seemed to know so much about it. I started Pinewoods in 1975, and he enjoyed having me tell him about what it was like to dance to May Gad, particularly when she forgot what dance she was doing halfway through. And we had the common history of, I started Scottish country dancing at 14, and he had done it many years before he started English, I think. Vermont, Trenton, New Jersey, Princeton, Philadelphia, we went everywhere. And he was a joy as a companion. And here's a secret that he made me swear not to tell, but it doesn't count now. There was a year when it looked like many of the wonderful Canadian dancers that regularly came to Across the Lake would maybe not come because the exchange rate between US dollars and Canada was particularly cruel to them. So we talked about it. We had each thought about it independently, and then we talked about it. And Frank basically made up the difference. He donated money and he made sure that nobody knew. I mean, perhaps Sharon, perhaps the people running the dance knew, but
Right.
nobody else
The
knew.
committee, the committee, right. And we greatly appreciated it. It was marvelous gesture and donation.
Yeah. But, and it was a treat seeing the picture of the two of us dancing. I'm not dancing at present, but I hope to get back to it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'd love to see you back at CDW. I see Dawn and Martha. It's so nice to see you, and your hand is raised. So you please unmute if you'd like to say something.
Well, I raised my hand mainly to tell the story of what Helen just said, and it was supposed to be a deep dark secret that Frank subsidized the Canadian dancers coming to Across the Lake, but we really wanted to encourage them to come because they added an extra dimension and a spark to our weekend. And also, I just wanted to say, I can't remember when I first encountered Frank, but it was probably at a Scottish dance in the late 80s or early 90s. And then, I saw him regularly at Scottish and English events, and he was always so kind, as everybody has said, and such a wonderful partner and wonderful to talk to. And I know we're going to all miss him a lot.
And Frank and I both worked at IBM. So in addition to having English and Scottish in common, we would talk about work-related things. And he worked in Yorktown. I was up in the early on in the Hudson Valley, and then later on in Vermont. But the types of work we did was very different. But we both worked in the big corporate structure and would compare notes and stuff. He was just knew so much about so many things, and was interesting to talk to. And one more comment on his subsidizing the Canadian dancers. He did not do that just for 1 year, but he kept doing that many years afterwards, and we really appreciated it.
Oh, my heavens.
I think that was the sort of person Frank was, which so many other people have testified to. He's just a wonderful fellow.
And he did not want anybody to know about it. He was a big secret. So,
so don't tell anyone.
We figured that since he's not here anymore.
But a lot of people, I just want to interject, a lot of people who come to Across the Lake, one of the things that they find so special about it, besides the venue and, and the time of year, and that we have a air-conditioned hall, was the Canadians, was the other dimension that all the Canadians, we probably have 25, 30 Canadians from Montreal and Ottawa and Toronto that come down, that they add so much more because they don't come to a lot of English events. I mean, events in the States. So it was always very special having the Canadians at Across the Lake.
Well, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to contribute to this multifaceted picture we're building of this fine person? Yeah, Charlotte, you have your hand raised, please.
So I just wanted to say I didn't know Frank intimately well. We met him in the early 80s. Steve and I moved up to Westchester and we started going Scottish dancing. And he was always a beautiful dancer. And I really enjoyed dancing with him. Then we found English and we did the English with him. And every year, which nobody's mentioned, was the flurry. He and Fred Cotton would come together to the flurry. And we always sort of hung out together. And it was just wonderful. And, it was such a shock for me to hear that he had passed, that I have to say, now that we're dancing again in White Plains, I keep expecting him to walk through the door holding his shoes in his hand and giving us his big smile. And He liked the ladies, so I always got this nice warm kiss from him, and it was just lovely. So he's really going to be missed by us.
Thank you, Charlotte. We all feel the same, I'm sure, maybe except for the kiss.
I just have to say, I also did, I only had the most casual relationship with him, and I didn't think much about it until I found that he had passed. And all of a sudden, I just missed him terribly. And I realized that he had had an impression on me all along, even though I wasn't aware of it.
Indeed, indeed. I see Anna. Anna, it's so nice that you're here, you and Wong. Would you like to unmute and say something? Or maybe it's Wong.
This is Wong.
Hello, Wong.
What I remember of Frank is that he learned my name before I learned his, and as a new dancer, I would come and look to him for the subtle nod and the point. I don't know quite how to phrase this, but I think everyone will understand what I mean when I say not everyone who helps the new dancers is helpful. Frank's help was always helpful, and I look to him for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You knew him both in English and Scottish.
Yes, I didn't. I knew him first in English, and then I started doing Scottish, and there he was. And all of a sudden, his clothing made sense because I didn't previously recognize that outfit. Register of Polling, he wrote. They ask what daytime class you intend to take, and he wrote something like, I've been dancing for I forget how many years. It was a very large number. And I think the evening dance will be quite enough for me. Thank you very much. And that was, he knew his limits, if that makes sense. Like he, sometimes I remember he would take shortcuts because he knew the choreography. And if he knew that he couldn't get someplace, he would make sure he got there anyway.
Yeah, he was very, very shrewd in that way. Well, thank you. Judy Rifkin, good heavens, so nice to see you. Would you like to unmute?
Or hi, everyone. Paul, I didn't get it to you, but when I was looking up information about Frank after he died, I found a photo from a long time ago from when he won an award. And I wonder if I might be able to share that. It doesn't look like the Frank many of us remember, but it's definitely him. And he had such a distinguished scientific career and was the recipient of so many awards. It's like sometimes we don't know what we do in our other lives. And I think it's worth sharing, if I may.
Yeah, I just made you a co-host, Judy, so you have the option to share now if you'd like to do that.
Let's see if we can do it.
Display the photo and then click on the share screen option.
Judy, I think you muted yourself.
Oh, there we go.
Wow. How old is he there? 12? Good grief.
Wow.
Thank you, Judy.
That's great.
Amazing.
Now, where did you get that photo, Judy?
Judy, you're muted.
How about now?
I heard you.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Good. I went looking and I started, maybe Frank was a Princeton alum. And of course, he knew that I had worked at Princeton so many years. So we always chuckled about that. And when he would come for the February fling, we'd often go and eat in Princeton. But I went looking. I did a Google search and kept following the different tracks. And if you can't see this little bit that I excerpted, I'll read it to you. It says, Frank Stern, American physicist, Charles A. Coffin Fellow, 1949 to 1950. National Science Foundation Pre-Doctoral Fellow, 1952-53, co-winner of the John Price Weatherall Medal at the Franklin Institute in 1981, Jack Morton Award, Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, 1988, for contributions to the theory of injection lasers and two-dimensional electron gases. Don't ask me what that means.
That's what it is.
And it noted that he was born in Koblenz, Germany, September 15th, 1928, and died on September 9th of this year, just 6 days short of, I guess, what would have been his 97th birthday. Or 90, is that right? Am I saying it right? Yeah, I think my math is 93rd. Okay, that's right. Anyway, so that's what I wanted to share.
It's amazing.
Is there anyone?
Paul, on that note, this is Stella Haverluck.
Oh, hello, Stella.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, hi, Stella.
Stella.
And
Yes,
Yeah, I'm very happy that you're calling in, Stella.
I've been
Stella was
listening all along.
a friend of Frank's and a coworker of Frank's at IBM. And Stella, please tell us what you'd like to.
Well, as I mean, this is a perfect entree after that lovely presentation about his accomplishments. And I've been listening to all of his dancing accomplishments, which of course I was aware of, but did not participate in. But I knew Frank in his professional life. I was hired into IBM in 1978, and that's when I first met Frank. And he was a manager of a group of scientists, which I supported. There were about 100 in the department at that time. And over the years, I supported him in many ways. And obviously was aware of these awards that he had won. The Morton Award was a big one. The Franklin Institute was a huge accomplishment. And Frank's expertise, physics expertise, was mostly as a theoretical scientist. I don't know if any of you were aware of that. His theoretical work supported many experimental accomplishments. And it was always the work that was behind the scenes, if you will. And my most wonderful experience with Frank, I can add my name to the many ladies who traveled with him. In 1981, Frank chaired a conference, The Electronic Properties of Two-Dimensional Systems, at Colby Sawyer College in New Hampshire. And he and I traveled up there by car. He picked me up at my house, loaded with IBM supplies, including a Mag 2 typewriter. And we traveled up to the college and spent a week there, where I basically typed all of the manuscripts that were eventually transcribed into a proceedings of the conference. And it was the most wonderful week of my professional life. I got to meet all of the colleagues that were involved in the physics community from across the nation and international as well. And it was an experience of a lifetime. And as always, he was a perfect gentleman and a wonderful, wonderful host, if you will. And over the years, we spent many times at holiday lunches with the group. And one of his, as many of you have hinted at, he had a wonderful sense of humor. It was very dry, and you had to really reach for it sometimes, but it was there. And one of his favorite tricks at these lunches was that he would pull out these various fortunes that he would have collected from fortune cookies. And he would present them appropriately to the people that he thought would appreciate receiving them. Those were always a great deal of laughter that would be shared. And what else can I say? The other thing is Frank traveled extensively in his professional life. He traveled across the country, traveled overseas, Japan, Europe, many, many times. And whenever he was away, I would always get a postcard from him. I have to struggle to read the handwriting, but I still treasure those postcards to this day. After all these years, I still have them. And he would always come back with a little sweet treat, if you will. He had a penchant for dark chocolate, And he would always, the trips to Switzerland would always come back with a little gift, bow with a bow on top, and just a little something sweet. And he would just always remember to do that, and it was always appreciated. He was incredibly generous, as you all have said, and including when I retired. Finally, we kept in touch over the years. Of course, he kept on as an emeritus after he retired. I believe he retired in the early to mid 90s, and I didn't leave IBM till 2013. But he always kept coming back as an emeritus, and we would always keep in touch. And even after I retired, we had lunch a few times with Sandy as well. And he was generous almost to a fault. He gave my husband and I a lovely Culinary Institute gift certificate when I retired. And I shared many an experience with Frank, and I can't tell you how much of an influence he was in my professional life. And,
well, thank you,
I will
Stella.
miss him. Yeah, I will miss him.
Yes, of course. Wow, what a long friendship.
Yeah.
And by the way,
Thank you.
Stella, by the way, as Frank's example makes very clear, it's not too late for you to join the dance community.
Oh no, I think that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. But thank you for the offer.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah,
I
he's a
see
sweet
Judy.
man.
Yeah, I see Judy Zinger has her hand raised again. Go ahead, please. You have to unmute. Yep, first unmute. I think that's going to be the phrase of the year, in the
Unmute
Oxford.
yourself. Yeah, the mention of the sweet tooth reminded me that he loved Jean-Jacques in the restaurant
bakery,
in Pleasantville, and he'd bring goodies from there. One of his many generous sweet things that he would do. So shortly after he passed, I happened to run into Steve Holton in Pleasantville, as it turned out. And he said, oh, he'd just been to Jean-Jacques. He went there to make himself feel better and remember Frank. So that's a good thing to do. It's really very sad. He was such a lovely man. And yeah.
I may take that example. I may follow that example.
There you go.
I'm going to try that.
Well,
I don't
my
think
friends.
your arm will need much twisting for that, Paul.
Touche. Yeah. Well, this has been very heartwarming. It's not too late if somebody else would like to say a few words. Doesn't have to be anything earth-shattering, just a memory if you'd like to share it, or an impression of Frank. I think Dave Barnett, you wrote some rather nice things in an email to me. Do you want to
Sure.
me to read your email, or would you like to do that?
I can pull it up right here. Just
Oh, yeah.
there we go. I was holding down the space bar to unmute myself, but I'm looking at a text file and typing just blanks. I got to know Frank as a regular attendee at the Freed for All, because I was one of the people that helped run it. And later he became a regular, as I have been at CDS's Early Music Week at Pinewoods. His first year there was 2009, and 5 of us went out to a nice dinner on the Tuesday evening at a very nice but short-lived restaurant near the camp. And we all had a great time. And when it came time to settle up, we've heard this story 3 times already tonight. We were informed that Frank had already taken care of the check. I have to please listen to accept this in the spirit it's meant. For people that don't know Frank well, might think that this story is making fun of him or something, but I think it's really appreciative. In running the Freed for All, you know, we've been running it since the early 90s, before a lot of people had computers. There was no internet, nothing. And we just gradually started bringing computers into the way we were running things. And in fact, when Judy Grunberg asked me to join the effort when it was time to move the database from a Xerox page of mailing labels to actually, you know, something on a computer, and I helped her with that. And at one point, after we'd been, you know, doing this for quite a few years, Judy told me that maybe we should make an address list that could be handed out, you know, at the event, so that everybody had, you know, a copy of everybody's contact information. And she said a lot of, you know, people had been asking whether something like that could be done. And it wasn't until years later that I found out that people was Frank. You know, he felt a need to be able to contact anybody that he danced with. And,
yeah, very nice. Thank you, David. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Sharon, please unmute and tell us your next story.
My next story is that if it looks like I haven't been paying a lot of attention, it's because I'm on my computer I'm on my iPad, but I'm on my computer looking through old photos. And I just emailed you 5 photos, Paul, if you can bring them up. They were Frank from 2007 from the Brattleboro Ball. I don't know if you can bring them up.
Let's see.
Because I don't have Zoom on my computer, so I can't do a share screen.
Huh. Well, let's see if I
But I
can do
emailed
that.
to you. And they were pictures that, I mean, 2 of them are pictures that Frank obviously let me take. Now, somebody mentioned that he didn't like to have pictures taken of him, but he posed for 2 of them. So.
Well, let's see what I can do here. Hold on.
Under your Child Grove email.
Yeah, I've got them. Well, he looks pretty good in some of these.
Yeah, those are better than the across the lake ones.
All right. We'll save all 5 of them and I'll try to share them. Hold on just a moment, folks. Where did those end up going? Here we are.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now I have to share my screen and I'll do that in just one moment. Yeah. So this is one of them that Sharon just sent me. And I would say he looks pretty splendid in a kilt. And is this the one that he asked you to take the picture?
I don't know if he asked me to take the picture, if I asked him if I could take a picture. So there's 2 that are very similar. And I think one came out a little bit, yeah, that one with the full length.
Right, right. Oh, sorry. Looks like I
know there were 2 more somewhere.
Right, there were 2 more. Where did they end up?
I'm looking through the items in my computer.
Oh, here's the other one. Hold on, let me share it now. I think this is the other one that you were referring to. Hold on just a moment. Is this the one you're referring to?
Oh, look at that.
This looks like it's
Yes, that was also the
February Fling, the Patterson
that's
Center.
Brattleboro, isn't it?
No, Patterson.
Yes.
It's in the February Fling.
No, it was Brattleboro.
Looks like to me.
I don't think it's the fling.
Oh,
No, it's not the fling. I recognize the door to the kitchen, and right here where I don't know if you can see my pointer, but that's where the refreshments were set up after the break.
These were all from the same night.
Yeah, I always remember where the refreshments are.
They always get very good refreshments. In fact, mine, Val, can I tell this story?
Sure.
When I have to ask Val. So,
Oh.
so at Across the Lake, I make all the savory treats for Friday night, and Wendy Gilchrist makes the sweet treats. And one year, and it might have been after this year at Brattleboro, that Val said to me, because they always have little, nice, beautiful treats. And Val said, I want you to try to make yours like the Brattleboro ball. Val, I hope you're not upset with me. Anyway, so then I started doing that. And I think I did it over and above her expectations. And anybody that's come to Across the Lake, you can ask about the treats. Some people the treats.
Well, thank you very much, Sharon. So, folks, unless there's another raised hand, and it's not too late to do that if you'd like to.
There is one, Paul.
Oh, yeah, Steve. Steve, I see you, and please tell us what you'd like to say.
Hi, just briefly. People, I suppose, know my daughter Alexandra, and
Yes.
she of a different generation from most of us, obviously. And she just wanted me to say how much she enjoyed dancing with Frank and how kind he always was to her, even though she was of a completely different generation. Thank you.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Frank's dance home was really international. But, oh, look I see another hand here, Ken, or maybe it's Lindsay. Please unmute and tell us what you'd like to.
We're just proving that it's really not Sandy Taylor. It's Ken and Lindsay. Just a couple things about Frank. As you know, I stopped dancing a while ago, and Frank was slowly stopping to dance and stopping his dancing, and so he would ask to sit out with me. And, you know, just as always, he would sit and talk with people, and he would sit out a dance with me. And then later in the same evening, he would come over and he'd say, I know we're not supposed to sit out a dance twice, but let's sit out again together. And so we sat out several dances together, even though it's against the rules. But Ken also tells me that Frank, when I was in hospital, Frank called many times to check up on me, and everyone was very kind, but apparently Frank was calling and worrying, and he's always been very good to me. That's it.
Indeed, yeah. Okay, Lindsay, your hand is still raised, so I'm going to call on you again. Just joking.
Nancy's hand is up.
Oh,
Yeah.
All right, please.
Yeah, well, mine is very short, but I blame Frank for getting me into Westchester country dance. I started dancing in around 1990 down in the city, and I went to the first Playford Ball, and there I met the two Franks, Frank Lake and Frank Stern. And both of them, when they heard I was living in White Plains at the time, said, you must come over here. And that's how it all began. Now we know how it all ends.
And how lucky we are that we have you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that Frank's dance home was really international. We haven't sort of inventoried all the different places that he danced, but clearly, you know, Vermont and Amherst, Philadelphia, New York, Boston, on the West Coast, Belgium, England, Canada. Where else did he dance in?
Pinewoods.
Germany.
Pinewoods, of course. Yes, and one Germany. Yeah, right. Yeah,
I knew him in Chicago, so I don't know if he was living there.
that's yes, Chicago. So it was truly international. I think what I'll do as we go out, I'll play a snippet from a live recording of a dance called Church in the Highlands, which was written by Fried Herman. And Church in the Highlands is the home of Country Dancers of Westchester. So I would say if Frank had a local dance home, that would have been it. So this is in memory of Frank and what we were so lucky to share with him. Sorry for the bad sound, but it is a happy tune. And I think that most of us, although we feel great sadness, when we think of Frank, we also feel a kind of calm joy in the memory of the life he lived. So thank you everyone for being here, and hope to see you at a dance sometime soon in Westchester, perhaps.